The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
Oh no, you're saying you want me to? I thought you were saying
Yeah.
welcome.
No, no,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, my
no.
bad, my bad. Welcome, welcome, friends and family, and Clayton. And I specifically saved this until we started recording because I wanted everybody to appreciate how nice you look today.
Oh, thanks, homie.
That's a good looking shirt.
Yeah, I
Button
like
up.
it. It's short sleeve. It's a kind of a black Hawaiian.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to culturally appropriate anything. It's just a black Hawaiian shirt,
I,
homie.
I dig it, man. What
Yeah,
what what's on the bottom half? Are we in cargo shorts or?
yeah. Cargo shorts.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
I went short shopping the other day because as we've talked about, I've lost a decent amount of weight. So now like all my clothes are just hanging off of me.
Uh-huh.
So I went short shopping and I'm disappointed how few options there are that aren't cargo shorts. Like
Yeah.
I'm not ready to be wearing cargo shorts again. It feels like it wasn't that long. I've probably still got some from the last time they were cool. Uh,
I
but
didn't
yeah,
know they
man.
ever went out.
Yeah, well, allegedly they went out.
That's
Uh,
weird.
yeah, maybe not. Um, but yeah, dude,
Thanks for
I'm
gonna
not.
tell me Jinkos are out.
No, those especially the ones with like the big cartoons on the pockets.
Yeah,
Those are always going to be in.
yeah. Never went anywhere.
Did you ever own a pair of those?
No, man. The when that started was when I was like 12, 12 to 13, and that was my last year in Oklahoma middle schools. So that's when that was just moving really fast in my life. That was the last year I was in Oklahoma middle schools. 13, when I moved to East Tennessee, there was a giant switch in the demographics between Oklahoma City and East Tennessee, like Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, that area.
Okay.
That's when everyone had the Jinkos and like they is most I remember a lot of like Tweety Bird and Sylvester the cat embroidered on them, like
Yeah.
in the pockets or on the bottom, but I couldn't afford them. all,
Yeah.
all the clothes that we had at the group home were donation clothes, and nobody was donating these Jinkos. They're holding
Yeah.
on
No,
to.
man. Yeah. You gotta save those.
Yeah.
I had a buddy that wore some, and I was so jealous. I wanted a pair so bad. Um, I don't remember what the image was. I just remember it was like a boxing glove. It might have even been two boxing gloves on the back pocket, and it looked
Yeah.
so cool. Like it was what I
Now,
needed in my life, but we couldn't afford them either.
a version of that I did get into, and I think I'm past the statute of limitations. When I was in
There's no
elementary,
statute of limitations for style.
okay, great.
Yeah, style
Well then,
crimes are there's no statute of limitations.
well
Fashion
then, I'm
crimes.
I'm about to be guilty. When I was in elementary school, like Telstar Elementary is when starter jackets. Like if
Oh
you
yeah.
if you were somebody that was anybody, you had yourself a starter jacket. And
Yeah.
that was also the era of Cowboys versus the 49ers. Like you
Okay.
were either a 49ers fan or a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
At least that's how it was in my elementary school. And we were not about to give up the coin for a starter jacket. Like I remember the only time my mom got close was when we got tax returns. I
Yep.
was like, "Can we go to Sears and get a starter jacket?" And she was like, "Well, we'll think about it." We went there, and it was back then in the early '90s. It was like $60 for a jacket, and she was like, "Hell no!" And she never cussed. She was like, "No, hell no." And so, in the Lost and Found, at the end of the school year, I remember in second grade, uh, there was a San Francisco 49ers starter jacket. And
And you're like, that's where it's been. I've been
I'm
looking for
like,
this thing.
I'm like, this is my jacket. Of
Yeah.
course, this is
Yeah.
my jacket. And I took it home and nothing ever, like my mom never said a word. I don't think she really noticed, but That was my San Francisco 49ers jacket for the next couple years.
Yeah, man, there's nothing wrong with that. And so you became a 49ers fan at the time, or
Oh no, I was always, I mean, as much as I knew, I was a second
yeah,
grader and there weren't older men in my house. Like I had a single mom. But I knew that I liked the 49ers because I knew I liked Jerry Rice. Like even
okay.
back then, I was like, Jerry Rice is the Michael Jordan of basket or of football, is what it seemed like back then. So I was on Team 49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was probably about that age is when I started, maybe a little bit younger, when I started collecting different types of trading cards,
Yeah.
baseball, football, basketball, whatever. And I got a lot from my grandpa. And that's, there was a time when I was a Cardinals fan because for whatever reason, I had tons of Cardinals players. And so I was just like, yeah, I guess I'm a Cardinals fan now. Um, I don't remember where I was going with that story, except that when you're a kid, you just cheer for,
Yeah.
whoever, whatever jacket you've got, or whatever baseball cards you've got, or
Yeah, because you
whoever you
don't
can
know
watch on
enough.
TV. Yeah.
You don't know enough.
The other thing I was going to say though, going back to the Jinko jeans, I never had any, but my cousin, who's probably 4 or 5 years older than me, he would sometimes, and I don't know that they were. I always thought they were rich
Okay.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They were richer than us, which didn't take much. But I always thought they were rich. So whenever he would give me hand me downs, first
Yeah.
off, they were 4 years too old for me, too big. Uh, but he gave me some pants, some Z Cavaricis. Do you remember Z Cavarici?
Sounds very familiar.
Let me tell you about these brown corduroy pants. They
Okay.
probably had like 75 belt loops on them.
Oh yeah.
Like the entire waistband was like just straight belt loops. Uh, and so I had these pants that were, you know, 4 or 5 years beyond my age. So they
Yeah.
were way too big. But I forced the issue. Like
Yeah.
I made it happen. Like kind of had to fold them over a little bit in the waist,
Yeah.
Uh, which, the funny thing is I've always thought that I was pretty cool. Um, I don't know that I would want to see what 13-year-old Justin was walking around town in. I feel like maybe I wasn't as cool as I thought I was.
What were you wearing back then?
Well, so my mom was still making jam shorts, which I don't know
Okay.
if you remember jam shorts. Um, I wore those Z Cavaricis that were too big and had too many belt loops. I remember having a Pepsi shirt with like a bomber fighter pilot on it, like
Yeah.
an old Ace fighter pilot. Um, we didn't
Do you
have we didn't have any name brand clothes, unless so there actually was a store called Name Brand Clothing. It was like
okay.
a kind of like a TJ Maxx kind of place, but
Uh-huh.
it was a resale. I think it was a resale shop. So sometimes we would get lucky and find something there, but otherwise I was just wearing whatever we could find, whatever I could get.
There was and it kind of reminds me of this shirt. There was a phase after Jinkos um in the early 2000s, like 2000, 2001, where like these shirts with dragons going down the
Oh
sides.
yeah, man, yeah.
uh I'm guilty of that one, homie. I thought those were so cool.
Yeah, man. You can still occasionally see one of those in the wild.
Oh yeah.
Very, very like uh
Are
you
they
could
on a
pro
dad? Are
you
they on
could
a dad?
I mean, I can picture them being on a dad, but I can also picture a 17-year-old dude wearing one. I feel
I
like it's
think
the
the
kind of
kids have kind of cool clothes right now. Kind of cool style. Except for the
yeah,
haircuts, except for the boys' haircuts.
yeah,
Do you guys have the mop top that's
yeah,
out there?
yeah,
Like the mushroom top? I hate
yeah.
that.
It's real dumb looking.
So stupid.
Um, what were you saying before that? You were talking about
The shirts? You said you could
oh
see him
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
wild.
Yeah, that's that's the sort of thing you would see at a Linkin Park concert. You're going to see a lot of Jinko style jeans
Mhm.
and that type of shirt. Maybe some flames. Maybe some. In fact,
And
I don't know
the
if
shoes with the flames and the 8 balls and the 13 on it.
I can picture this in my mind. I'm picturing dice,
Uh-huh.
blue dice that are somehow on fire.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's part of the shirt.
Yes.
Maybe what else is on there?
I like to have
A
ones that
spade, like a
a
like a spade from like the Ace of Spades.
I rocked ones that had like a maintenance tag on it and a name tag. Like
Okay,
it'd be embroidered and it would be not my name. It'd be
yeah,
like Joey and it's Timmy's tire shop on the side or something like that. I
yeah,
wore those to school often.
yeah. Um, so I wanted to get a picture of this dude the other day because he reminded me of, well, he didn't remind me of you, but I thought that you would appreciate just knowing that he exists. But I couldn't get a picture without like being real obvious. This was Sunday morning. I stopped at Quick Trip to get some coffee before church, and there's this dude at the pumps, probably a '90s Corvette, an older
Okay.
Corvette. Okay,
Yeah.
and this guy I would guess is maybe in his early 60s. As I pull into the parking lot, he's in the driver's seat of his car, and I see him like just feathering his hair back.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's like, it's just so cool. And he gets out, and this dude, I'm trying to remember, like
Is
he's
this
in
Corvette a T-top? Is it a T-top?
oh, I don't remember, but it might have been.
Okay.
He is like he's an archetype.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
one of the archetypes. Okay.
I'm digging
So
this
so
guy.
he gets out and he's like, I don't know if he just got back from the lake or if he's going golfing, but either way, he's got no concerns. It's a Sunday morning. He's going
And what's
in to
he
get his
wearing? Is
coffee.
he wearing like swimming trunks or board shorts?
They're no, they're kind of like maybe boat shorts.
Okay.
Okay, so they're casual, but
Uh-huh.
they're just kind of loose and flowy. And he's got like a similar shirt, that style of shirt, but
Uh-huh.
not the pattern. Like this dude is just chilling out.
Yeah.
Everything from his flowy hair to the way
Uh-huh.
he's walking in with his coffee cup. He doesn't give two shits, man. It's Sunday morning and life is good.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, man, that's a whole vibe.
Yeah.
I wish I could just show this guy to Clayton because you'd be like, oh yeah, that's one of the archetypes. That's
That's
one of the
actually a
five
goal of
people.
mine. Yeah. That
Yeah,
that's the one I want to be.
yeah, kind of like weren't you talking about a guy you saw out there? Um, maybe he's on a motorcycle or a similar
Well,
scenario where you saw somebody that was just in a vibe.
I think I put off a vibe, and maybe this is what I was talking about
Yeah, that's right.
when I had my jean jacket
Jean
on,
jacket, yes.
and it happened to be. Oh man, I don't have it in here. I thought I might, but it had a bunch of like navy patches on it. It was a cruise jacket, and it's
Yeah,
something that only new guys get, new guys or guys that are at the end of their career. You know what I mean? It's kind of a cheesy thing to get,
yeah,
but yeah, I was wearing that jacket riding with some red dirt country on. I believe it was Co Wetzel, and that was when I was still smoking the cigs pretty regularly. So I had a cig out, and I think it was like March or April time frame, so it was like still kind of chilly in the air
yeah.
around here. Yeah, and it was a whole vibe. It's a younger reckless version of the guy in the vet, I think. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
when the
yeah.
guy in the vet was 30, he was that guy.
Yeah, that's who your guy is becoming.
Yeah. I dig that.
Um, Speaking of becoming, what's been going on with you? What's new?
Um um so this is what I want to talk about, but I'm always, fighting my own, and I think investing my time into mental health and my own demons. I'm not fighting my mental health, but I'm always, looking into my mental health and fighting demons. and I got turned on to a book. This is a classic, and I wonder if you've heard of it. It's On Death and Dying. It's by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Uh, no, I'm familiar with the author, but I've never heard of that book.
Yeah, well, this was the book where she introduced the stages of grief.
Okay.
So, denial and isolation, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance are the classical stages of grief. And it was in this book where that was introduced.
Okay.
So, she's an academic and she introduced it to mostly medical doctors as a way of relating to patients, and specifically terminal patients from cancer related. But she identifies in there as this grief is grief, like you can grieve losing a job, and I think I have grieve losing a job, just grieve losing relationships, grieve losing people. Obviously, I think maybe the most common one is losing a loved one. I think I mean, it's kind of unavoidable. You're gonna eventually lose a loved one, and going through these stages of grief, and it's just it's packed full of good stuff. It's kind of like, I wonder if you've ever read a book. For me, it was Marcus. Is when I first started getting into Stoicism. When I read Marcus Aurelius, kinda, but more Epictetus. I like to read with a highlighter, and everything he said, I was just highlighting. I was like, gold, gold,
Yeah.
gold, gold, gold. That's kind of how this book is. Have you ever read any books like that?
Yeah. Probably the one that comes to mind is that Psycho-Cybernetics.
Oh yeah. Did you actually read the black and white copy of it?
Yeah, so I listened to it probably 3 or 4 times, and then I bought the physical book just so I could do that, so I could highlight things.
Yeah. Well, that's how this denial section is, and I'm just getting into it. But I I pulled up a review on just the denial section, and I want you to listen to this description of people going through, and it's technically the denial and isolation.
Okay.
But listen to this description of denial and isolation, and see if you've if you've ever experienced this yourself, or if you've known someone that this kind of rings true for. Um, Initial reaction denial is often the initial reaction to receiving a terminal diagnosis. Like I said, that was kind of her target audience. Patients might refuse to accept the reality of their situation. Like, no, you've got the wrong person. You've made the wrong call. Thinking that there must be some mistake and that their condition isn't as serious as presented. I'm going to go get a second opinion. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Defense mechanism. Denial acts as a defense mechanism to protect patients from overwhelming emotions of fear. So, just initial, I think I've had this where my subconscious was like, no, that didn't happen. Actually, we're going to forget all about this thing and we're going to bury it deep in here. So, protect patients from their overwhelming emotions of fear, shock, and distress that allows them to gradually process the reality of their diagnosis. That's if you're moving through denial in a healthy way, like actually processing and going through. Isolation. Alongside denial, patients may isolate themselves. This isolation can be physical, emotional, or both, and there might be other levels of that. Patients might withdraw from family, friends, and activities they once enjoyed, preferring to be alone with their thoughts. Now, there's a temporary state of denial, and that's denial and isolation are usually temporary phases. As patients come to terms with their diagnosis, they often move into the subsequent stage of grief. It talks about role of caregivers and stuff. But does any of that sound like someone you know, or maybe things that you felt?
Yeah, I mean the isolation part for sure, um, but also it's kind of interesting to think about. To say denial, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, of course I'm not in denial because this thing happened.
Yeah.
But I think probably the most common way to live in denial is not to say it didn't happen, but to act as if it didn't. And that's what I tend to do. So so like we've talked about my dad's death and
Hmm.
my lack of processing it. I never would have said, well, he didn't die, because obviously, like, you can't deny that. But what I did do, and what I tend to do, is just ignore it. Like, we're not going to think about that. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to pretend like it didn't happen.
Right.
So that's probably the most practical way that we live in denial, I think, because you can't, you lost the job, you
Yeah.
lost the marriage, like, this thing happened. But denial isn't necessarily saying it didn't. Denial is maybe living as if it did, or just
Or
kind of ignoring it.
yeah, what you're denying is that there's a problem. Like, yeah, my dad died
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm moving on. Like, hey, dude,
yeah,
that's a big thing.
yeah. I mean, we all die. Everybody
Yeah.
dies.
Yeah. So I think the denial there is that there's an issue. And
Yeah,
that's so what I thought of is how I've treated it myself. And at one point in life, I was denying there was a problem. And I think I was just denying it with my actions. Like I said, not denying that the stuff I went or the stuff that I saw, whatever, like you said, I'm not denying that I didn't deny that it didn't happen. What I denied was is that it was affecting me at all.
yeah.
And so I was drowning, I was drowning myself in bourbon every night to go to sleep. But uh
So
yeah, I don't know.
what do you do though if, like, you really, again, if we go back to the death of a loved one,
Hmm.
like, there's nothing you can do. So what's the point in dealing with, what I'm saying? Like, what's the point in thinking about it? Because there's nothing that can change. It sucks. It's a shitty situation. Life goes on. Like, there's no sense in just thinking about it.
I think that's a very valid view from a short-term perspective. Or maybe, not to like that's something that a young man would say because I think as you get older, you see that if you don't deal with it, it's going to come out in different ways. Or maybe I don't know if everyone sees that, but I do think with experience a lot of people see like, "Oh, he obviously never got over this thing that happened or she was
Yeah.
obviously affected by that and just never dealt with it." So the view of what's the point of dealing with it, maybe it's just a short-sighted view when you're not taking into the other examples that you've seen, like, oh, mental health can actually destroy, it can take someone's life. Mental
Yeah.
health can, mental health problems, untreated mental health, whatever, can take someone's life. um yeah.
Well, I think I think that, in fact, I said this. I told a friend, like, man, I scammed the system. I made it through. I didn't even have, like, I was able to make it through with no breakdowns and everything. Life is back to normal. And I thought that it was just that I found a shortcut.
Yeah.
But to your point, and I think probably this happens in everything that we don't process, I just delayed the inevitable, and it grew
Yeah.
in that time that it was out of sight. It grew into something much bigger. Um, One thing that's interesting though is a lot of times people don't people don't see or make the connection of this behavior as, oh, this thing happened and they never got over it.
Yeah.
Instead, what we generally say is, that behavior is offensive to me, or obnoxious,
Unacceptable.
or aggressive, or unacceptable, with no consideration for the fact of something happened here. In fact, I was talking to a buddy, a new friend that I'm real excited to.
What the fuck?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
I'm just adding friends left and right.
Okay, don't
Uh,
know if I like this.
I was talking to a new buddy the other day that, I this story has been in the news, so I won't be too give too many details, but we have a mutual friend, that a couple years ago was in the news for some pretty horrific stuff, like wild, like torturing animals, like freaking weird stuff.
Okay. Not
And
funny.
yeah, that
That's not
wasn't.
funny at all. That's not funny at all.
Uh, so he says, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And I was like, "Oh, actually, I do." And I'm thinking about all of the terrible things that he did. I had no idea that he was about to say, "That's my friend." But he tells, "Yeah, this is my buddy," and he tells me about how he was sexually assaulted when he was a young child, and then it happened again when he was a teenager, and then even like into adulthood, he's just in these situations where, like, I won't go into detail on that one, but like, just this guy has been
He
abused his entire life.
attracts
Yeah.
repeat abuse. Yeah.
And so it's not a justification. I don't know what to do with it. I don't like, I'm not saying that the guy shouldn't be held responsible for his actions. All I'm saying is the story that I knew was this guy did some horrendous, terrible stuff.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the hand that he was playing with. And I think that
Hmm.
that happens a lot. Like, and maybe not to that degree. Maybe not. Maybe it's not that serious. But the guy that is just constantly looking for attention, or is constantly putting people down, or is constantly criticizing, or is whatever the behavior is, I'll bet you if you trace it back far enough, you can figure out something that they never got over,
Yeah.
something that was never processed.
Um, so this is a hypothetical situation, right? This never happened. It's just something I'm imagining. Or a story someone told me that there was a guy in the process of being investigated and fired from his job, and he had a meeting with the second highest boss. And the second highest boss said, "Hey, what you're doing is just unacceptable, and there's no excuse, and there's going to be punishment for it." And this guy asked the second highest boss, like, have you checked my evals? This is the guy talking. Have you checked my evals? Like, have you asked opinions about me? I'm actually a pretty stellar performer. And if you have a stellar performer and all of a sudden their normal performance is up here and then it goes down in the toilet, as a leader, shouldn't that be an indication that something's wrong with that person? Shouldn't that be a time to step in and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And even if that person breaks policy and gets in trouble, shouldn't that be considered, like, shouldn't that be like you said, something to your point, shouldn't that be investigated? I think you owe it to that employee to just say, "Hey, what's going on?" Instead of, "Your performance sucks," all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and we're going to hammer you for it. Um, the story goes that leader didn't really have an answer for him and just circled back around to, "You did this, you deserve to be punished."
Yeah. Well, I know that all of the leadership classes that are taught at that I've been to at the sheriff's office talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like, that's one of the kind of the core functions of a leader, is when you see that somebody's all of a sudden having behaviors or performance issues, maybe that's something to look into.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think that happens often, because it's much easier just to address um, it's easier to address the behavior than to address the cause, or to even care about the cause.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
podcast, I think. And we can circle back to that later if you want. But talking about denial, um, I've seen this in me, and I think I've seen this in other people, and specifically what comes to mind is cops and veterans. Um, I'm talking to a lot of veterans right now from my old command because we had tragedy, and most of us, like 90% of us, are all out in the world. We're not active anymore. A handful of guys still are. They're in leadership positions now. And something I've seen in myself, like I said, and in other people, is just the denial of this even has a reaction on me, or like this even affects me at all.
Yeah.
I've heard, I've heard, uh, I've heard former law enforcement and active law enforcement, maybe not with their words, but definitely with their actions. And yeah, I guess later on, I've heard him express that I didn't think there was ever a problem. Like I thought everybody went through this. I thought everybody had the same thing, and I must be fucked up because now I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
That is denial that there is that you're being affected. You know, like you said last week, it just because I have a torn labrum and you have a torn your torn labrum is worse than mine doesn't mean that I don't have a torn labrum. Well, that same mentality that I've heard communicated of I didn't know I had a problem until, I was going through a mental however they
Yeah.
describe it.
Yeah.
I think it's because, well, I mean, it's the denial. And I think the way you see it manifested is the isolation. The most that I've seen is the isolation.
Yeah. So have have you read the whole book yet? Or you said you haven't?
No, I'm working through it right now.
Okay. One of the interesting things about that, again, I haven't read the book, but I'm familiar with the concept,
Mhm.
is that it's not always a linear progression,
Yeah, she
and
talks about that.
it
Yeah.
sometimes you'll come back,
Yeah.
or you'll skip steps, or you know, um, kind of be all over the map. But
Mhm.
each of those stages, I think 100% are parts of the process.
Well, yeah. And what's the hardest part I think is just recognizing. Like I'm really not throwing any judgment at someone who's in denial that there's a problem,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's I think the hardest part is recognizing that that something even happened, or that something happened and it's affecting me. That something happened
yeah.
and that it's affecting me.
I mean, that's the case though in like all of life, denial that I'm overweight, denial
Yeah.
that I'm not eating enough, denial that I'm not getting enough sleep, or like from all aspects of our life, we just tend to act like nothing's wrong. Just maybe it's wishful thinking, or I don't know, but I think that the denial impacts all aspects of our life.
Absolutely. What are the ways that people usually find out about it? Because, like, it just as I'm thinking in my mind, the antidote to denial, or at least the way of getting through it, is just being conscious of your life and being conscious of the situation. Like thinking, oh, this thing happened. Like my buddy died. This is going to affect me. I need to get in the process of addressing this in a healthy way, or else this can get real bad.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
antidote, but I think people normally find out by what oh, I'm sorry.
well, probably the safest and healthiest way is to have people in your life that will tell you. Um,
Yeah.
I I think that's pretty rare though. One, to have somebody, well, so when you're in that situation and you've already become isolated, maybe you're not around people that can tell you, but also people are really, I think, leery of correcting, or maybe not even correcting. They're People aren't as willing to bring that stuff up as we maybe should be.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I don't want to, I don't, if you're not already depressed, I don't want to make you depressed, or I don't want to put more on your plate or whatever. But just having somebody that says, hey man, you don't seem like yourself, or, is
Yeah.
everything okay? Or, um, you know, what we've talked about it before, like in our previous job when it was a joke about how much whiskey I drank last night,
Uh-huh.
or, I drank a whole bottle or whatever. Like if for somebody to say, man, I get what you're doing, but that's not the way. Like there's
Yeah.
there's a better way. That's the first and best. But probably what happens most time is deny, deny, deny. And then all of a sudden, I'm losing my job, I'm losing my marriage, losing my
Yes.
house. Something
Yeah.
huge has happened. Something huge and tragic has now forced me to say, okay, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
But then the problem is, well, now you've got more than one problem because you've still got that issue. And now you've got all of this other stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, now you've got this charge, and now you gotta find a job, and now
Yeah.
you
And you
got,
lost your job.
yeah, now you got child support, and now you got all this stuff. And you have to, I mean, hopefully at that point you're recognizing that there is a problem, because
Yeah.
unfortunately I think there's there's different bottoms, or maybe we,
Yeah.
like, when people hit rock bottom, there might be another bottom underneath that, because they didn't acknowledge that they were at rock bottom the first time.
Do you think that's because like we just think that we've like wishful thinking that, oh, it's going to get better? Or is it like, well, it's not like I can handle it still. I'm not at bottom yet. Or is it like literally just if I just don't think about it, it'll go away? Why is it? Why do you think it is that we have such a hard time acknowledging that we're affected?
Yeah, I I think for whatever reason, and I don't want to throw judgment, because I think it's usually, there's something of making you this way, but for whatever reason, people, it just hasn't got their attention. They haven't, they're still in denial so bad. They don't even know that they're in denial, to where, like, you could be holding it up in front of them and they still just wouldn't see it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, one time I was working Christmas night, or Christmas Eve night, and we there was a uh disturbance in a neighboring town of Wichita, and me and a guy went there. I'm not even going to tell you his name. I'll tell you off the air. But me and I think you know this story. Me and a guy went there, and there was a homeless man that was just wrecking shop through this town, like picking up everybody's Christmas decorations and like throwing it. He broke a window, throwing it through
Oh
windows,
wow. No, I've
picking
never
up
heard
the
the story.
lights and chunking it. Well, we walk out on foot, and me and this guy and another townie were there, and we're like, I don't know if this guy's even around. Then all of a sudden we turn a corner, and he's around, and he's right fucking here.
Yeah.
And he takes off. My coworker cuts him off and draws his weapon, and this guy, because this guy's picking up stuff and throwing at him, this coworker draws his weapon and says, stop, stop, stop. Well, this homeless man charges my coworker, and is like
Oh
trying to
wow.
take my coworker's gun. And they're moving this way. There's a car in between me. I didn't know that he's reaching for his gun until kind of after all this had gone. But I had my gun out initially and transitioned to my taser. And as soon as they peeked from around the front of the car, I had just a perfect 12 and 6 o'clock shot, and knocked this guy down, the homeless guy. Well, you know, we wrap it all up and book this guy. I have to end up taking him to the hospital because, of course, he's got chest pains all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I had to talk to this coworker. I'm like, dude, it was acting time. Like, we're past verbal, commands. We're past show of force. Like, it's time to do something. When someone's running at you trying to take your gun, and what he said was, and there's no judgment, he's perfectly honest, and I think he's grown from it. He was like, I just didn't know what to do. I was telling him to stop, and he was coming at me, and I just didn't know what to do. And I feel like that's a very short term, a very small window, but an example of
Yeah.
something happening and you being stuck in, like, I don't know what this is, so I'm just going to keep on. Stop, stop,
Yeah.
stop, stop.
In terms of denial, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, denying the threat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Denying that this person is elevating the game.
Yeah. And again, it's the same denial of the threat of the credit card company or whatever. Like it's the
Yeah.
same thing, just different applications.
Yeah. Um, we can talk about the other ones later on, but that was just the one that I really wanted to hit on
Yeah.
this time
Uh,
was denial. Just because I think there's an or because this talked about it as like a phase of the grief cycle, and I feel like I've seen people that have just been stuck there for years. Like that's
yeah.
the biggest hurdle to get over is just acknowledging that something is affecting you.
Yeah. I could definitely see that being the first step. Uh, Another really good book, kind of maybe along the same lines, is I think it's called The Top Five Regrets of the Dying,
Mm.
written by a hospice nurse. Very, very really good book.
Yeah,
I
I think I've
think
heard of that.
the author was Marianne Ware or something like that.
Hmm.
I've got the audiobook. Listened to it a couple times. It's solid.
I think you sent that to me one time on
Yeah,
Audible.
I may have. Did you see that text I sent last night about or no, I guess it was this morning about that show on Prime?
What show was it? I'm you
Uh
sent it last night, but I didn't read it until this morning.
it's called Heal.
Hmm.
HEAL. Did I not? Maybe I didn't send it. Um it's
Oh
good.
yeah, all about the mind body connection and relation. Oh, it's got Deepak on it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. They talk they kind of talk a lot about some of the stuff we're talking about where there's a part where they talk about like modern medicine and how modern medicine really is based on the concept of like the human body being more of a machine and less of a living organism,
Right.
and talks about trauma and emotional trauma and all. Like it's I've only I was probably 10 minutes in when I sent you that text because I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is Clayton would like this. um, it was pretty late, so I didn't finish it. I'll finish it today and let you know.
Is it about, are they kind of, since Deepak is in it, are they promoting Ayurvedic medicine or Ayurvedic medicine?
So he doesn't have a major role yet. They've probably interviewed him two or three times, and so far he hasn't mentioned that. He's mentioned that in the uh, audiobook that I'm listening to, but not this particular documentary.
Do you know anything about Ayurvedic medicine?
I've heard of it because it's in this other book. I don't remember. I remember him talking about, so Veda would be the Sanskrit word for, I think, wisdom or truth. And
Maybe.
I remember him talking about where the two words came from, but I don't
Mm.
remember what it is. What is it?
So it's my exposure to it. I was gonna say, I was gonna, well, so my first exposure to it was Deepak talking about it in these books and in these CDs. That's how I got him back, 15 years ago with CDs. So that was my first exposure to it. I imagined it being like, because part of his story is he went from being an actual medical doctor to being an Ayurvedic practitioner, and then he became friends with Oprah, and became this motivational speaker fella. But my idea of Ayurvedic medicine was just kind of like spiritual healing, like almost like chi chakra stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know why that was in my mind. When we were in Bahrain on one of my deployments, there is an Ayurvedic medicine place there that I found, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm about to go check this out." Well, I went to the shop, I walked in, and it's kind of just like a mud hut. And this is in a city that we were at. But it was this mud hut that was like built into a house. Like this was a handmade clay house that
Okay.
this Ayurvedic office was in. Um, they had this guy on a kind of like a gurney. You can tell it was supposed to be a hospital table, but it never changed from gurney. Like they hadn't made that transition yet from gurney to actual hospital table.
Okay.
But he was laying on there, and they had like little mountains of mud going down his back, and there was a fire, like a candle, inside each one of the little mountains of mud.
Okay.
I don't know. It was not what I was expecting, and it seemed like I didn't want any part of it. At that point, I was out.
Yeah. Well, any idea what they were treating him for?
No, I was like, oh, look at the time. I gotta go.
Oh, I didn't get an appointment. My bad.
I forgot. I have to leave. Bye bye.
Yeah. I think the whole I think the point of the documentary so far is just the power of the mind to heal the body.
Hmm.
I think it was Deepak. I think he's the one that says it, that the power that created the body is the same power that heals the body.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And one of the compelling arguments they make is placebo.
Yeah.
Like obviously, if placebo works up to 75% of the time, then at least in those situations, it's nothing other than the mind.
Yeah.
Nothing other than the mind telling the person that they're getting well or that they're being healed, and their body responds,
Yeah.
which is it's the same it's the same principle as that psychocybernetics book. Um, but man, I really think there's something to it. Now they do make a good point that they're not saying not to use modern medicine, and they're not saying, he says that if you get hit by a car and your guts are hanging out or you need surgery, now's not the time for holistic medicine. Like you need a
Right.
doctor, you need a surgeon, you need to go to the hospital. But outside of like acute immediate emergencies, your body is equipped to take care of it. Your body is equipped to heal itself, which I think there's something to it. I really do. I don't know, I don't know what the limits are or how it works, but I tend to believe it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, even though my mind might change on this, or it kind of always does, but I think of it like my same relationship with regulation in, let's say, in the free market. I think of modern medicine as necessary in in some instances. Like I think it's even beneficial in some instances, but mostly I don't trust it, and in a lot of places I think that's actually doing bad. Like I think they're
Mm.
actually doing the opposite. And I'm a layman in every sense of the word. I have no idea. Just from my perception, it seems like things that they've said will help you actually hurts you. And uh, that's historically documented. Back in the 50s, they used to prescribe cigarettes to boys that were, puny and that
Dude,
were weakly.
what a time to be alive when you could go to the doctor and get some cocaine for your toothache.
Yeah.
And
Heroin to help you sleep.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, they those doctors were cool back in the day.
Yeah.
Now they're, trying to give me some 800 milligram ibuprofen. Come on, bro. I
Yeah.
can get that at Walmart.
I that's kind of how I think of modern medicine now. Like like you said, if I'm missing a limb or if my guts are hanging out, send me to the ER and have them give me all the drugs. But if it's not that, I'm more interested in the holistic approach, even though I
Yeah.
really don't know what that entails besides just living better and
Oh,
listening
yeah.
listening to experts, I guess, with vitamins and supplements and diet. But besides that, taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Which that was one of the big so far that's been one of the big points of the documentary is how important diet is
Hmm.
to health and healing and all that. And I mean, I'd be really curious. This could probably be easily found. I just don't know if I trust the statistics. I'd be really curious to look at like cancer rates or just diseases in general and see if they really are on the rise like it feels like they are. And because maybe it's my
No.
age that I've been alive long enough to start having things get cancer, or it seems like I don't know a lot of people that died or have cancer currently or have beat it. And it just makes you wonder what is going on. Is it food? Is it environment? Is it just like it seems like there's more than there used to be. But it may just be that it's just my circle, so I'm exposed to it more. I don't know.
I don't know. It seems like everything's getting worse because I hear people say that food nowadays, especially American food, is poison. Like I think we all pretty much know that grains and wheat are not that good for you, no matter what. They might be tasty. Like I agree, wheat bread, white bread is better than gluten-free bread, but wheat's not great for you. Um, I remember the drinking water. Didn't it seem like we used to trust the drinking water,
Yeah.
the city water? We used to trust it, and now, hell no.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on well water.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, like the even that, even what's in our water seems like it's more dangerous now than it used to be.
yeah.
But maybe that's just because we know more now. I don't
That
know.
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, were we just naive back then, or was the water better? I have no idea. Do you know?
I suspect that we were probably naive and we were probably better off for it.
Yeah,
Kind of like that, picture. I think I sent it to you the other day about said something like, what if we weren't designed to carry all of the world's problems, and
right.
technology has put us in a position where now I could go on social media right now and hear all kinds of stuff around the world, not even
Yeah,
just the country, all kinds of horrible things around the entire world. And I may even have connections to those things. And now I put that on my shoulders, and I wasn't designed to know about what's going on, across the world. I wasn't designed to bear the burden of somebody that lives, thousands of miles away. And so maybe technology and knowledge and whatever else, maybe that is causing the problem. Maybe that's creating stress and anxiety, which leads to um, disease and illness and injury.
yeah,
Maybe,
absolutely.
maybe that's it.
Well, I mean, like, think of how many ways stress affects you in the secondary ways. Like, we know, or I've heard that, and I've read that stress creates cortisol in your stomach, which actually makes it harder for you to digest your food and
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
makes you gain weight. And uh, it causes inflammation. Stress causes inflammation, which is, I mean, in hundreds of different ways, is just a killer. Like, and neurological inflammation is suspected to be a source of like autism and other mental diseases or mental affections, neural inflammation. All that can be done by stress, but think the secondary ways of like when for me, if I'm real stressed, I think I need a cigarette. I and I know that's not true, and I know it's stupid, but just when I said that, I put myself in the mind of just last week or days ago. I was depressed, and I was like, you know what? I just need to smoke, and I
hmm
had a smoke. I That's a secondary effect: overeating, not enough sleep, the isolation.
yeah.
Those are all secondary and tertiary effects of it.
Which, think about this. They mentioned stress, and they mentioned fight or flight and what that does to your body.
Woo.
And then he was talking about prolonged stress and um, oh, what was the term?
Was
I
he
can't
talking
remember the
about
term.
repeat trauma?
No, but as he was describing it, I was like, oh wow, like that's probably every cop in America, because he's talking about, so when you're in fight or flight mode,
Mm-hmm.
what that does to your system, both your immune system and um, your uh, we may have to cut this because I'm blanking on the word, your nervous system.
Yeah.
So your immune system,
And
your nervous system,
endocrine system.
all of it is like you're dumping everything into it because that's
Yeah.
just how we were created to run from a tiger or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you do that, and then you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and keep doing it, and then before long, your body just is going to respond in a negative way, where you're going to have weight problems, you're going
Yeah.
to have lack of sleep, you're going to have depression, you're going to have all of these things. And you and I think, are pretty critical, generally pretty critical of overweight cops, and I think for a
Yeah.
good reason. I
Yeah.
think I think that if you're going to be a cop, you have to be fit. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your beat partners to be fit.
But there were great cops that were overweight. Like just that one thing
Yeah,
did
yeah,
not
yeah,
make him a bad cop.
for sure. But and society, society makes fun of them, and they get a hard time. I get it. But maybe part of that is because of what's going on with all of the cortisol and the stress. And you get home from work, and you've had a shitty day, whatever's going on, and you just find something to snack on, and then you go grab a beer or a whiskey or whatever. And there are really, really good people that are doing all of the wrong things, that are just like, you can see why they made the choices they made. You
Yeah.
can, like, and kind of like what you said earlier, like for us, we're like, how do you not see that?
Yeah.
But when you're in it, you don't. When you're
Yes.
in it, I'm overweight. I don't want to exercise because I'm overweight. I'm depressed because I don't exercise because I'm overweight. And then I'm eating this comfort food because it brings comfort. And it's not because he's a piece of shit. It's not because he's lazy. It's not because he whatever. It's because there's a lot going on that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah. And at not at the top of his list is his diet. Like, hey,
No.
I've got bigger fish to fry than my diet right now.
Yeah.
Or
But
time
but
to exercise.
what do you think though, if that did, because so let's say that somebody comes to you today in that scenario, like, I'm stressed, I'm overweight, I'm whatever. Would you how would you approach that? Would you begin with the diet? Because I think it's probably where it should be, but that's not where we typically start.
No, it should be acknowledgement is the key because even like I said, even when people do come to you, and I think I've gone to people, I think I've talked to you when I'm in my tailspins sometimes. Even when you do go to someone, you're still not fully aware of all the pieces of your problem. So like me as a good friend, and I don't know if I would do this, but just because out of fear, not because I shouldn't, but I think what should happen is I say, yes, that sucks. What you're going through is a problem. And I think it's affecting you in these other ways. Like, I know we haven't talked about this in months. And dude, you should have called me if you're dealing with this. To be honest with you, what's your sleep like? And then I think if I start asking you non-offensive questions of how your health is, then I can get like, hey man, how's your diet?
Hmm.
Like, how,
Yeah,
do you know anyone who's died from heart problems? You don't have to
yeah.
come out and say, "Hey, dude, you're a fat piece of shit," but you should bring it up. I don't know what the best way to do it. And like I said, I don't even know if I would just out of fear, but I should.
Well, just the way you just said it there felt like, like you were saying it from a place of concern and not judgment, which I
Right.
think is probably, at the end of the day, as long as we're coming from a genuine place of concern, then your friends probably aren't going to be offended by you asking hard questions, or,
Yeah.
or even personal questions, because if they don't want to tell you, they just won't tell you.
Right.
But it would sure be a whole lot better to ask and to put it out there, and for you to, even if I don't want to tell you, at least I know you care.
Yeah.
Because when you're in isolation and when you're in depression, the the typical feeling, at least for me, is, well, if he cared, he would have asked.
Yeah.
And since nobody asked, then nobody must care. And you can kind of follow the logic to where you start feeling like you are alone,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny how when you're in isolation, you want to be alone,
Yeah.
but then if you're sad that you are alone.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when you don't get invited to a party you didn't want to go to anyway, but you're still like, oh, why didn't they invite me? Well, you didn't want to go anyway.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of every time, I don't want to go to these stupid parties that, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I was basically going to parrot exactly what you just said.
Yeah. I wouldn't have gone even if they had invited me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you're saying I don't want to go because it's bad, and then let's say you do go, you're probably going to have a horrible time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
you're
people,
you're you're definitely going to be a fucking bummer when you're there.
people aren't going to want to hang out with you.
Yeah. Um yeah, I was thinking about this too. It almost feels like, cuz I was thinking of the first steps. Like even acknowledging there's a problem, but later on when we get to first steps of like talking to someone, like I guess for me, like I said, it would be like saying to that person hard things. I feel like it reminds me of jumping off of a high board, or jumping off of a high dive, or doing or jumping off of a cliff. Like I get this feeling, and I see it in my son because my youngest son does wild, crazy stuff of like, that's so scary. I have to do it.
Yeah.
But that's the positive way. It's the same feeling. I feel the same feeling of that's so scary. I don't want to tell this dude that he's got some issues going on. But any of the first steps, I think, is relatable to that feeling of jumping off the high dive or jumping off a cliff into a lake.
Yeah. Yeah. I know from personal experience that a friend that's willing to take that risk is worth more than, I don't even know if you could really call them friends, but worth more than 100 acquaintances that aren't willing to take that risk.
Yeah, yeah. You have to care for someone to have these hard conversations. It has to be more than an acquaintance.
Do you have any probably guys, but any people in your life that have authority to tell you when you're wrong? Like that
Oh,
you've expressly told, hey, just so you know, you have the authority to correct me when I'm wrong.
hmm. I don't know if I've said that. I was about to rattle off some names of mostly men and my wife who have that authority to do that to me, but I don't know if I've ever communicated that to them.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. There was, I went to a training a few years ago. It was a leadership training, and they were, I don't remember who the speaker was. He was some well known guy, but he was talking about how whatever the percentage of men that he talks to, or I think it was leaders that he talks to, but it might have been men, don't have, like, they surround themselves with people, with yes men, basically,
Mhm.
and they don't have anybody in their lives that has the authority to tell them that they're wrong. And you could probably think of some, if we think of in terms of leadership, some leaders that we had that had no accountability. Nobody could tell them anything, couldn't tell them when they're wrong.
Yeah.
But then if you think about that in their personal life, like that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
To have no one in your life that can tell you, hey dude, I think you might want to take a look at this. You might want to,
Mm.
you might want to consider um, a different option. And so I had, at one point, I had three guys that I expressly told, hey, you've got permission to correct me. Um, Two of them were not really that close anymore, and one of them moved away. So at the moment, I would say that I probably don't. You have permission. I've never
Yeah.
expressed that, but there are people that maybe I haven't given express permission to correct me, but I would be happy to at least hear their concern. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now there are also people that I just don't.
Their
I
opinion means nothing.
nothing. Not in a bad way. Like, just, yeah, I like that guy, but I just he doesn't have any authority. He did.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know if you can relate to this. I know other something I've experienced is I have not always been at my best behavior, and I'll say that I've hurt people. Like when I was in a self-destructive phase of my own life, I that affected other people. And I've apologized and I've moved on, but I know that those people specifically that I affected and even people that were around that situation will always have, or at least they've seemed like they've always had a very negative opinion about me. And I own what I did, and I've in most cases I have apologized to them face to face, or I've attempted many times to apologize to them face to face, and they just rejected all communication from me. Um, that stuff is real. What I did, and when I was in a self destructive phase of my life, I hurt other people. That's real. I can't be held down by that forever. And I know
Yeah.
those people are always going to have that negative opinion. And God bless, I have to keep moving on. And I can't hold on to that. It's easy for me to hold on to that opinion of myself. And I don't have, like Nietzsche said, when we're tired, we're attacked by enemies that we conquered long ago. Sometimes I have to address that mentally,
Hmm.
but right now, you know, really always, I can't, I got to keep moving, homie. I know I hurt you and I'm sorry. And I hope you get past that. But right now, I have to be past that. I've learned from it. I've changed this behavior. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's definitely got to be a point where, yeah, you've acknowledged it,
Mhm.
you're dealing with it, but you also don't stay there.
Right.
You don't, because that's unhealthy too. It's
Right.
unhealthy to, like, okay, so I admit that there's a problem, but you can't just, like, that's not the only thing you see. You've got to see past that.
We eventually got to get to the next stage.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we eventually have to get to the next stage of grief.
Hmm. And I do, I do want to just reiterate the fact that grief isn't always, and this is kind of a bummer episode. We need to talk about something happy um, in the probably short time we got left. But
We're only an hour in.
is that it?
Yeah.
It is legitimate to grieve loss that's not necessarily obvious. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is like grieving lost opportunities,
Hmm.
grieving job loss or relationship, even if the relationship is still there, but the depth isn't. Like I mean, anything that you feel that you lost, I think it's reasonable to grieve, and it's probably going to look a lot the same,
Yeah.
whether it's a person or a pet or a job or a opportunity, whatever it is. Um, it's all it all needs to be felt. It all needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your body, when I say your body, also your mind and your psyche, it's gonna even itself out somewhere. Like somewhere some pressure's got to give. When you keep stacking all this trauma in there and not dealing with it, it's gonna come out some way. It might come out in your it probably will come out in your physical health. It probably will come out in your relationships, how you treat people, and then it will come out in how you treat yourself. So like everything, but something we always talk about is mental health. You have to you have to make the choice, and you're going to make the choice. You can either do it consciously or unconsciously. You're going to make the choice of, do you want to be in the driver's seat of how you react to this trauma, or you react to your physical health or your mental health, or do you want to be in the passenger seat? And the passenger seat is comfortable. Like it's well worn.
Yeah.
We've been there most of our life, and it's impossible to judge anyone for being in the passenger seat because we've all been in the passenger seat.
Mhm.
Um, but at some point you have to make the decision, and it's always better sooner rather than later. But even if it's later, you still have to make this decision of, am I going to, if you don't make the decision, you're already in the passenger seat, I guess. If you don't make the decision, you're already there. But at some point, you have to make the decision: am I going to continue to just let life happen, or am I going to step out of this passive role and actually do something for myself and for my situation? Like, yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks that I lost this job. Am I going to, I don't know what a form of this would be, but I imagine like litigation. Am I going to sue this old employer? Am I going to keep on telling people how they screwed me over even after I see him for years? Like, let me tell you, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. Or,
Yeah.
or am I guilty? Or am
Yeah.
I eventually going to move on, homie?
Yeah. Yeah. Another way that I think applies is like not just in grief, not just in mental health, but like I can create whatever life I want
Yeah.
for my family, in my relationships. Like if I feel like my wife and I don't have a like we're not connected enough. Well, what are you going to do about that? Are you
Yeah.
going to just talk about it? Are you going to complain about it? Or are you going to like take control, get out of the passenger seat and say, here's one way that we can address it, or here's at least something that we can do. Um, Same with finances, same with
Mm-hmm.
physical health. Like it's so easy to sit in the passenger seat and complain about where you're going. Well, take the steering wheel then. If you don't
Yeah.
like the, in fact, that should be that should be a saying. We'll have to figure out how to word that correctly. But if you don't like where you're going, get out of the passenger seat.
Yeah.
If you don't like where you're going, take the wheel.
Yeah. That's the only way, because you're only doing one of those two, and most of the time you're in the passenger seat, so you're already making the choice. Just you have to make it
Yeah,
consciously.
I like that. So, what are some things that you're consciously like directing your life? What are some I know some of them, but what are some things that some changes that you've made or things you're doing?
Something that I'm focusing on now is communicating with people, and I'm doing it consciously with my kids. I'm trying to do it consciously with my kids. And I mean, how that's looking is, instead, whenever they do something that annoys me, or because they're young, whenever something blows up and, oh my god, dad, blah 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 blah, instead of me doing something that I've been guilty of before, passively just waiting for something to happen and be like, hey, knock that shit off, or whatever my that version is.
Yeah.
um Actually having a conversation with him and be like, hey, do you see how when you hit her with this, she might not like that? You say you love your sissy. Would you like if sissy did that to you? So doing that, having the same kind of conversations with, I'm I'm just trying to be active in the conversations that I'm having with my wife, you know, reaching out. A lot of guys from my old command have been talking to me, and I'm tempted. My natural reaction is to get off the phone as fast as possible. If someone is, especially if you're coming to me as a fucking bummer, like I'm not trying to have that. I'm getting off. My instinct is to get off the phone as fast as possible. What I'm trying to do and what I've been doing is to get past that, like taking a breath and listening to what this guy is saying, and not acknowledging that I'm kind of being selfish right now. Like, hey, you're being real selfish. This dude is coming to you in pain. Listen, I don't have to have the answers. You know what I mean? People,
Hmm.
a lot of times, whenever you're talking to someone, you might not necessarily be looking for the answer. You
Yeah.
just need someone to hear you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to live consciously. And also something that we've been doing that I think I'm in a pretty good routine is my physical exercise. I'm running. I'm not running every day because I'm trying to give my legs some healing, but I am doing kettlebells pretty much every day. I'm exercising. I'm giving myself a good aerobic workout every day. I'm reading my stoicism. I got this book that I like. It's kind of like a daily devotional. It's the
Oh
Daily
yeah.
Stoic by Ryan Holiday. feed myself some philosophy from that, and trying to chew on these books of themes that are in my life. Like, yeah. And I'm trying to be active in that.
And do you feel like you've seen some success with that?
Yeah. Yeah. The the physical, I don't know, there's lots of short-term successes that have happened, but I think the real reward is in the repetition. But yeah, man, my house is nicer right now. Since we've been slowing down and talking with people, my house is at more peace. At least it has been for the last week and a half. My house has been at more peace. Me and Ashley are talking through, and we're not perfect, but we're talking through these stressful situations, and actually talking instead of yelling at each other, or just being snarky to each other or dismissive of each other. We're actually talking it out. Um, my physical health is the best it's been in years, and I think it's just because I've been on the routine. But I still get waves. I still get waves, of depression sometimes.
Yeah.
There's still trauma that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
there's been some.
None of these things I don't think are um, necessarily like a shortcut to perfection or enlightenment or anything like that. But it does seem like, at least at least for me, and it sounds like you, it seems like it provides some relief, and it provides maybe a better launching point to progress to the next level instead of just staying where you're at.
Yeah.
Um,
The secret sauce is in the repetition, or in the ritual. You know what I mean? In the repeated ritual. That's where I think the secret sauce comes from. There can be instantaneous healing, but I think that would be the exception versus the norm.
yeah, or maybe maybe kind of like when you start losing weight, you'll lose 5 to 10 pounds pretty easily, and it's probably water weight. Um, and kind of the same thing, like when you do these things, you'll find some initial relief, and it's good, like it's fine. But the real work, the deep work, is probably going to be found in, or the deep success is probably going to be found in longevity,
Yeah.
commitment, consistency, all that kind of stuff. Which, it's funny how it seems like it would be easy to be consistent with the things that work. But I find that it's not any easier to be consistent with, even though I know it's going to work, or I know that if I don't do it, it's going to be worse. I still struggle with it, like specifically running or exercise. Like, I know that I've got about a 2 week window that if I don't run within 2 weeks, I'm going to get depressed.
Yeah.
It's like I've been around long enough to know that I've got 2 weeks, and still I haven't. I ran Sunday. I haven't run since last Sunday, and I had plans every single day to do it, and it just never happened. But you would think that, man, I know that I got to do this. Why am I having so much trouble getting out of bed? Because there's still a struggle, it's still a fight. There's still, this part of me wants to be comfortable in the passenger seat, even though I know that I've got to be in the driver's seat. I've got to be uncomfortable. If I want progress, I've got to be able to be uncomfortable. I got to be willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Kicking the can down the road, procrastination is still a daily, if not hourly, sometimes battle of mine. My wife gave me a list of chores to do today. She had an appointment to go to, and it was just me and the kids for the first half. And so while she was pretty much on her way out the door, I threw out this obligatory, "Hey, is there anything you need me to do while you're gone?" And she's like, thank you. Actually, there's a lot I need you to do." I was like, "Oh shit."
Did you call the kids around? Guys, listen to this because you're going to need this.
Well, that's what it quickly turned into. But she was like, "I need this, and done." And it was a list of like 5 things, and I got 3 of the things done ASAP. And I was thinking, I'm good to I'm good to fuck off for now for an hour or so. But today I did it, and I don't always do this. Most of the times I don't do this, but today I thought, just knock out these other two things right now because I know that I was gonna. What I did do afterwards is go on a pretty good run, check some emails, and then take a shower and jump on the pod. I know that I would have done all of those things and just not done the other two things on the list. And when she
Yeah.
came home, she would have been like, "Hey, you asked me what you could do." So
Yeah.
yeah, today procrastination is the biggest killer, maybe of
You
all.
you know what else though is, have you ever, just specifically related to working out? I'm not sure if this works for other things. Have you ever finished a run or a workout or whatever and felt as bad afterwards as you thought you were going to feel beforehand? So what I mean by that is like the struggle of getting out of bed, getting your running shoes on and getting to the gym or getting outside running.
Mhm.
Like it feels like, oh, this is going to be terrible. I don't want to do this. In my entire life, unless, unless there's an injury or something, I've never finished a workout and felt as bad as I thought I was going to feel,
No,
or even felt as bad as I did before the workout. It's never happened,
it's never happened. It's
but
almost
it's,
is it impossible?
I
I don't know.
mean, unless you blow out your knee or
Right.
get hit by a car, I've never experienced it. I've
Every time.
never I've never regretted a workout. Now there have been times, um, in fact, this happened just not that long ago, where I'll get like half a mile and I'll just be like, it ain't happening. It is not happening, and turn around. Like there's been times that I've done that. And I guess, maybe then you would feel disappointed. But even
Yeah,
that, like,
what's your self-talk like when that happens?
um, it used to be pretty bad,
Yeah.
but now I really try to focus on like I didn't have the fuel, I didn't have the mindset or whatever it was, but um I really like when I'm running, I like to take a third person, like a third
Yeah.
neutral approach where I'll just be like, all right, his legs are feeling good today. I'll refer to myself as he or
Yeah.
his, those are my pronouns. Um, be like, he's feeling good today. His breath is good. His mind is right. Starting to feel a little bit of pain in that left knee.
That's a
It,
mindful practice.
it just removes me from the equation to where I'm not thinking about how miserable it is or how hard it is. Um,
I
I,
count my
I
breaths.
yeah,
When today I was running and I ran out, I can run like a stud on my treadmill. Like I could run for an hour probably at 7 miles an hour. If I'm doing it a lot, definitely 7, maybe like up to 7.5 in that zone for an hour on my treadmill. I'm not doing that because I've been running these streets lately, and these
yeah,
streets in Sugar Hill are not the treadmill.
yeah, man.
I'll go from like I'm good if I'm at 5. Like I try to keep it around 6 miles an hour, which is a 10-minute mile, but I'll check my watch and sometimes I'm at like 12-minute mile when I'm running up these hills. And today my trick was to count my breaths. Like I went through I went through boot camp in 2003, but I imagine myself and being in boot camp and like, could you call cadence right now, or could you respond to cadence? Like, do I have enough breath of going 1, 2, 3, 4? Could I even do that? So I'm
Yeah.
like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doing that will, and I'll see my heart rate dramatically decrease on my watch just from doing that, of just
Yeah.
controlling my breath, going from passively huffing and on the verge of asthma attack to consciously controlling my breath. Changes the whole game.
Hmm.
Are you
I
doing
wish that,
anything besides running? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
now I was going to say that I wish I wasn't so forgetful because I was going to ask you something about running. This is probably why I interrupt people, because I know that if I don't get it out there, that I'm going to forget about it in about 10
Yeah.
seconds. Um, it'll come back to me. Right now, I'm not, but for the past 2 weeks, I've I've been telling myself I've got to lift. I can't just run.
Yeah.
Um, Especially with I'm still more or less doing the same diet where I'm eating at a maximum once a day,
Okay.
more often than not, like every 2 days or something like that. Um,
Any more
and
fainting spells?
no, I've come close,
Oh,
but
you got dizzy?
I got dizzy. Um, but again, I think that was dehydration. Um, but I do feel like I've lost some muscle mass
Yeah.
with the lack of food. So I want to start lifting again. And I want to get back on creatine
Yeah. I was
and
going to ask about that.
take some of the different supplements. But then I kind of wonder, man, if I'm barely getting enough water as it is, like I don't know if I can commit to drinking even more enough water to be healthy using the creatine.
Yeah.
Um, I had found some stuff. I didn't find it. Somebody told me about some stuff that basically is like a legit natural steroid
Huh.
that I've used it before. That it is like you can get it on Amazon. Tongkat, Tongkat.
Oh.
Uh, and then there was another supplement that you take with it that it produces testosterone. Have you heard of this?
No.
Uh, well, I'm telling you, I really feel like back when I was taking it, I really feel like it made a difference, a big difference.
So I was just about to ask, but I think you answered it. You would rather buy this Tomcat stuff off the internet versus but just drinking and eating more and taking your creatine?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I mean that, yeah. Who wouldn't?
Okay.
Because let's see, this is just I haven't even considered this until now. But in my mind, to eat more is more likely to make me gain not weight. I don't care about the pounds, but it's more likely to make me fat. Whereas these supplements,
How
they're
many
just
calories
straight muscle, baby. Just
you think
straight
so?
testosterone. No, I don't know.
Ha-
In my mind, that's how it works.
Back when you were, I mean, and it was just last week. I, it's okay to take some days off. But when you're running every day, how many calories do you think you're burning? I guess it's a
Um, I don't know. Because the treadmill's never right. Like,
uh-uh.
I had I don't really track it with my watch anymore. I used to wear my watch when I ran, but it messes up with my map when I run, so I don't use it. I don't know. I mean, an hour run. What do you think? 40
I
minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that's right around 1,000 calories for me.
Yeah,
It's like yeah, between 900 and 1,100 calories.
yeah. And I would bet probably maybe 500 to maybe 700 calories per day, like on average.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't be right. Because even on the days I eat, those are the days where I'm taking in 700 calories. So I don't know, a couple hundred calories a day.
So you're already at a calorie deficit. You're burning more calories than what you're putting in, even on the days that you eat, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think you'd be all
You
right.
think you think you
I
think I'm
think
okay to eat?
I think you're good to eat. Give yourself a little
Did
something every
I
day.
did I tell you that my daughter calls me Ozempic face now? I don't know. That seemed kind of rude to me, but
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, man. Is there anything else you got?
Um, this is probably the first one in a long time that we haven't talked about religion, which is maybe good. We can
Yeah.
save that for the next one.
We're not a one
We're
trick
not
pony.
we're not trying to thump. We're not trying to thump no Bibles or
Uh-uh.
Qurans or
I don't want to
any
talk
other
about
holy
just
books.
my theology.
I was going to say something smart aleck, but I'll save it. I'll save it for the group chat.
Okay, sounds
How's
good.
that? Um, yeah, no, I don't think I got anything else.
Yeah, I've. What do you think about the political developments? I mean, we still got some time. What do you think about the political developments? Oh, JB says he's not going to pursue. He didn't step down. He just said he's not going to run again. He's still the president for the next couple months.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Dude, I don't know. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine that Kamala is going to be the nominee. There's just, you know, I think that we do a pretty good job on here of not being real political.
Right.
But man, I don't care what side you're on. I just don't know that anybody actually likes her. I don't know that anybody is like, she would be a great president.
Well, it's weird. That's definitely what people are presenting. People are presenting that face. I follow a couple like mainstream media pages on Instagram and on social media, and I'm like MSNBC and CNN, just because I don't want to live in an echo chamber. Like I want to see other people's point of
Yeah.
view. And some people are talking about her like she's the second coming, like she's the bee's knees.
But do you think that anybody actually believes that? Because that to me, like that's expected,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so off-putting. I feel like people see through that.
Well, I think people, so I, whatever, I can't speak for everyone, but I think there are some true believers in that message, just because people are so used to drinking the Kool-Aid on whatever my team says. And this is a critique on all major political systems, but whatever my team says, that's the truth.
Yeah.
And if my team's saying you're out and she's in, by God, because these are the same people who, oh, a week before the presidential debate, because the presidential debate is when it all went downhill for Joe
Yeah.
Biden. That was the big one. A week before that, we're raising 30 million, $40 million for him in these fundraising things, and they were telling you he's sharp as a tack. Like if you
Yeah.
if you said something like that, oh, you're dismissed because you're just being ignorant. That was exposed during the presidential debate. So those same people, and like I said, this applies to all political parties that say one week say this is what we believe, and everyone's on board. The next week when they say, "Hey guys, now we're on this side," everyone's on board. So
Yeah.
I think there are some true believers, but most people have. I I I can't believe that people are fooled that easily. Like, I don't think you can tell someone, and there's so many issues that you can pick and choose. So many issues that are no goes.
I just don't. I understand and I get the concept of, well, my team says this is who we're voting for, so this is who we're excited to vote for. I get that. But in terms of people that are like actually true believers, I just don't know how. And somebody could say the same thing about Donald Trump or whoever, I get it. But at least he I feel, I mean, he's got rabid supporters that, I mean, he's got a personality, and like I feel like you can be a Donald Trump supporter and point to reasons why. I feel like the only reason you could be a Kamala Harris supporter is because she's on your team. Oh, I was just saying I can get behind, or I can understand the idea of, I support this person because they're on my team, but I just don't understand how anybody could say I support this person because, and then point to specific, like point to actual reasons. I just, so I don't think that she's going to get the nomination. Um, and so I'm curious how that shakes out. I'm curious who the options are.
I thought she already is. I thought the Democratic National Convention happened and she's the nominee.
Is she the official nominee?
I believe so. Yeah.
It's going to be wild then, because I don't know why they would do that.
But I mean, I've lost so much faith in the electoral process anyway.
Yeah,
I don't put it past, and this is way before the Trump thing. Like the Bush and Gore election seemed pretty fishy, and it just happened to be on different teams back then. But
yeah.
the last election seemed pretty fishy. I don't know anything. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Whatever. There's just there's some questions. Like more
Oh yeah,
people than ever happened to vote for Donald Trump, and more people than ever happened to vote for Joe Biden. And
yeah,
you're cuckoo if you even bring, like, isn't that weird?
yeah. I remember one thing I was going to say is when they do that, when you have a week ago they're saying that he's sharp as a tack, he's blah blah blah, and then a week later he drops out. I I feel like that goes to the whole concept of we don't even trust the water anymore. Like you cannot trust the media. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't be a responsible person and trust what the media is telling you. And I don't know that you can really trust what, well, I know you can't. You can't trust what the government tells you.
No.
You just can't trust anything. And this is, I forgot, I wanted you to remind me of that video. It's at the point with technology where you really can't even trust your own eyes with
Yes.
deep fake videos or with AI videos or even audio. It's going to be really, really interesting in the next couple of years, or certainly in the, in our kids' lifetime. Like, how does the mind even deal with that? Because
Especially the videos on your cell phone. Like, I think it's kind of easier to see when it's on a TV, but most people are
yeah,
consuming their data on a cell phone. These AI videos are real. They look.
they look real.
Yeah.
And and so like that one you sent me is pretty low budget.
Yeah.
But if you had higher, if they had devoted more time and money and had more skill, I just wonder what that does to the mind, to the human mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it's possible to conceive of this in the human mind, because I see it right now. I wonder what that will do, for like societal evolution or just consciousness in general.
Well, that's one of the big pieces of simulation theory is one some of the people that you hear talk about simulation theory, and I've heard this from like Duncan Trussell and people on Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff like that. So I don't know how much authority to give them. But one of the things about simulation theory is uh if this has been done once, it's probably been done many times. And so there's rabbit holes down into the simulation. Like if I am in a simulation theory, this must be something that humans do. Humans eventually build these situations that are so good to where the only way to top it is to put yourself in a virtual reality to where it's even more mind-blowing. And
Okay.
if I've done that in the past, I it seems like we're getting pretty close to starting that again
Yeah.
because I already I can't trust anything. Like I need to, because everything is so convincing and everything is so, AI is getting so good. Eventually it's going to be, it seems like it's going to be more worthwhile. The only way you can impress me is if I go into an immersive universe like Ocular or like whatever. That's the only way to get me now.
Well, there's going to be a point where virtual reality becomes actual reality.
Yeah, and maybe that's already happened.
And that I'd have to think about that. Because what would you even call reality? Reality is
I know what Deepak would call it. It's up here. This is the only reality. Your perception
so and
and your perceiver.
if you are in AI, if you're using an Oculus, could that, yeah, we'll have to think about that. That's interesting. But that's going to be That's going to be a game changer as these videos and experiences become more and more real. The concept of what's real is going to become uh, it's going to be impossible to nail down.
And what if there's a feature? We already know this exists because this happens in dreams. When you catch yourself in a dream, even just thinking about dreams where you didn't catch yourself in a dream, just the memory of a dream, you don't remember that there's a whole other reality. You think that you are in reality. We
Yeah, you're
already
in
have the
the reality.
yeah, we already have the ability to forget this life existed and to just be in this new scenario because that's what we do every time we dream.
Yeah. Did
When we're
you
there, we're there.
I heard somebody recently talking about that. Oh, my battery's about to die on my computer.
Okay.
I heard somebody recently talking about that kind of in terms of death. That like
Yeah.
every night we essentially
Die.
die and we're okay with it because we're comfortable with it. We've experienced it before. And that's kind of interesting to think about. Like when you're dreaming, like you said, that is reality.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe that's
especially
what death is.
I mean, and we already have like in this reality, in this life, in this incarnation, we're already developing the abilities to implant memories, like the Mandela effect. We think that there's already been social memories planted. If you listen to the conspiracy theory podcast I listen to. But if that is true, like all technology, it's only going to get better.
Mhm.
And so you could start someone off, and maybe I feel like that's what dreams are anyway, because you just start off in a race car, or you start off, you know what I mean, walking down the beach. There's
Yeah.
no, you're not even worried about how did I get here. So maybe you
Yeah.
don't
And it's
even
just,
have to implant memories.
yeah, I don't know. But what I do know is that my computer is about to die. So rather than let that happen, we'll give a formal goodbye.
I bid you adieu.
Adios. See you, buddy.
Later.